The legacy of the HTC Vive VR headsets precedes it. They've built a reputation for offering the best virtual reality experience that money can buy. And on paper, the HTC Vive Pro 2 looks like it delivers the same thing. However, what does it actually offer in practice? Hi, I'm Stead, technology editor here at Fire.com.au. Today I'm reviewing the HTC Vive Pro 2. Now HTC is taking an interesting approach to the Vive Pro 2 VR headset. It's selling it just as a headset for $12.99 here in Australia. It doesn't sell it as an entire kit. The idea here is that people who are already in the ecosystem can simply upgrade from the previous HTC Vive headsets and walk straight in, everything's backwards compatible, everything will work. You can buy it in a full kit, which costs about $2,000. Now it's certainly expensive because, hey, that's a lot of money for a VR headset, but you also have to have a PC that can actually run the thing. However, as I'll talk you through, that money does deliver some level of quality. Okay, so let's just compare the HTC Vive Pro 2 with the HTC Vive Pro 1. Now, as you can see, there's very little difference between them. Indeed, the design has basically not changed at all. And that's fine because it's actually a really good design. You've got, as the original had, got flip-ups on the ears, on the headsets, nice thick padding. All of that carries across here. Easy to flip up, have a look outside if you need to. These are quite maneuverable. You've got very thick padding here. There's a really good job of actually blocking out all the light. It's quite comfortable to wear. When you do put them on though, you do notice a difference between the two. This is definitely better balanced. This is the weight in it doesn't feel so front heavy as it does on the original HTC Vive Pro. So you definitely do notice a difference when you actually put it on. But really, it's not the design here where you're seeing any major evolution. Indeed, they've both got the same thick cable hanging out the back, which is, in a lot of ways, one of the biggest pains of actually wearing the thing. All the improvements are in the display. You've now got two 2.5K fast twitch real RGB LCD screens in the front end here, which HTC is marketing as being 5K. It's really 2 times 2.5K screens, but still 5K puts this as the best display on the market at the moment, especially when you add 120-degree field of view and 120 Hz refresh rate. Really impressive. You've got a 57 to 70mm adjustment here as well, which is good, allows you to adjust it and based on your unique eyes and what they need to be. You've also got now display stream compression, which gives it a better ability to handle these bigger files that the 2.5K screens can play as it's connecting between you and the computer via this nice horrible cable here. So these are all big things. It's backwards compatible, as I mentioned previously, and it's also got dual mics in there. And the audio in here is real high-res audio, and despite the look of them, actually is just really surprisingly good. I'll go into the performance in a little bit later on. But so that all the improvements here, they're really in this front end. It's impressive that HTC has been able to do that and keep the same footprint here as it did with its predecessor. Perhaps what's more important are the features that are not here with this upgraded HTC Vive Pro 2. There are no tracking cameras inside the front end of the headset here, just the pass-through cameras. So you're still reliant on the old base stations for tracking. On top of that, the controllers have not been updated, so you're still looking at these old controllers from 2018. They're great controllers, but they're old and their battery doesn't last too long. And on top of that, there's no eye tracking in here. Now, you may be wondering why I bring up such expansive and new age features to be in this HTC Vive Pro 2, but the reality is that these things do exist in the HTC ecosystem already. They're in the Vive Focus 3 and the Vive Eye. So the fact that these features do exist in the HTC ecosystem and haven't been brought into this top high-end, really expensive VR headset, for me is a bit of a negative. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's important to start by focusing on the actual VR experience. And honestly, the VR experience for this is phenomenal. Okay, forget about the old low-res days, forget about the old screen door effects and those things that we've had to live through in the past. This is an immaculate experience. When you put it on, it looks like you're in a proper game, not like it used to be where, when the first Vive came out, it kind of felt like you were playing an old era, like last generation game. This feels like it's a beautiful 3D world that you're stepping into. The sound quality of these things is surprisingly good. I would have liked to have seen them actually cup your ears a bit better. That would have been nice, but it's surprising how well these block out the ambient sounds when they're on. As mentioned previously, the foam's so good that it's completely blacked out. There's no inside light coming on, so you do get fully immersed in this game experience. The tracking system may be old school, however, it does work really quite well. I was really impressed with the way that the controllers were tracked and my heads were tracked. There was no delay whatsoever when playing the games. And there's been some improvements to the interface too, the way that you can access the pass-through and also access the desktop. Now, I did play quite a number of games, just testing it out, and to a certain extent with all VR headsets, you are reliant on the quality of the software that's available. Now, of course, I had to test it with Half-Life Alyx, the best VR game I've ever played, and it was freaking fantastic. It was so much fun playing it with this headset. I really do love that game. But even checking out things like Google Earth, Subnautica, Gorn, Dirt 2, like I played a whole bunch of games and everything looked fantastic and played great on the HTC Vive Pro 2. You know, ultimately, if you're going to pay this money and it's going to advertise itself as the best VR experience possible, it's true. It is the best VR experience possible. However, there are some things I don't like. Perhaps one of the things that I most dislike about the HTC Vive Pro 2 is there's been no real improvement to the setup process, and the setup of this VR unit is an absolute pain in the butt. You need so much space, there's so many cables, there's so many power points you need. You know, the base station setup, to set these up, you need to mount them up on the wall. So, you know, it encourages you to put a hole in your wall to mount these things, and that's pretty invasive. I ended up using tripods instead, which is a perfectly viable solution, but still, that's a lot of extra yards for someone who may not be willing to be chipping into their walls or hasn't got any carpentry skills. And on top of that, the software's been a little bit iffy. You know, it's dropped out on me a few times. I've had to reset the room scale a few times. A number of times it hasn't been able to find my headset or my controllers, something like that. I've had to reset it. So there's quite a bit of a pain in the setup, and I feel like it could have been easier. I spoke earlier about the lack of the quad tracking or the tracking support, like the Focus 3. The Vive Focus 3 has 4 quad tracking cameras in its front end, which may have erased the need to do those base stations, which would have erased the need to have more cables and erased the need to have more power points. Even some of the design ideas just don't make sense. So you can see here, here's two of the more than 2 of these that you need to set up, and they're both angled to the right, my right, and so you can't sit them into a PowerPoint like that. If they were built so that you could actually use them in a PowerPoint like this, just smart little things like that, or hanging down, something other than the same way, it'd make it a lot easier to set up. Just little things like that haven't been improved. So I find the setup for these things is just really archaic, and I believe in just 1 or 2 years from now, they're going to be looking back at the way we set up the HTC Vive Pro 2 and thinking, wow, you guys were cavemen. When I talk about space, it actually suggests you need about a 6 meter by 6 meter space to set up the HTC Vive Pro 2 and to use the room scale and to walk around and play these games. That's a huge space. I don't think many people would actually have that amount of space available to them. I used it in a 4x4 room. I had a big red couch around the corner, and it still worked fine. So you don't need that advertised space. I think you could probably get away with about a 3 meter by 3 meter, should be enough for you to set this up. But like I said, space is a big problem for this, and that's why I believe that moving away from this base station setup into something that's more built into the headset definitely needs to be the way of the future for the HTC Vive. I'm a bit torn with the HTC Vive Pro 2. The reality is the VR is excellent. It's the best VR experience I've ever had. And if you look at it just through that lens, then it's hard to ignore this awesome piece of technology. However, it feels more like an iteration than an evolution, kind of like a mid-generation console, if you will. And that way, I'm just not sure if you actually really need it. I keep thinking to myself, hey, there's going to be an HTC Vive Pro 3 very soon that actually redoes the entire ecosystem, where we have new controllers that do finger tracking and the cameras are actually in the headset. And there'll be changes to perhaps this big thick cable that dangles off the back, and I've tripped over a few times and yanked it out of the laptop that I was running this off. So I do feel like this needs to take one more step in evolving the HTC Vive ecosystem before it becomes a must-own. That's our HTC Vive Pro 2 tech review from finder.com.au. Make sure you hit the website for the full written review and to find out what the best VR headsets are available across all the different price ranges. You know where to head.